It's fantastic weather today at Changdikgung, and this is where they actually filmed part of the TV series Kingdom, which is a really great place to really discuss the RedBox Korean Heavy Cavalry 172nd set. So let's quickly take a look at those miniatures and see how they go. I am a purveyor and collector of the finest goods and wares, because slaves are now outlawed in my country, but not in the Islamic State. But I'm not about to, pack up my bags and charter a boat and fill out the necessary legal documentation just so I can move over to the Caliphate, because, it doesn't look like a nice time. Look, no matter the darkness of your own life, it's probably brighter than living under ISIS and owning slaves. So anyways, that's why I got into miniature collecting. It seemed like a nice alternative. I like my goods to be rare and spicy, and in the class of 172nd Wargaming, there are few rarefied subjects as Korean heavy cavalry of the 16th to 17th century. Think about it. How often have you walked the aisles of your local wargaming club and seen Korean heavy cavalry? Ever! They don't exist! No one cares!
Are you sure about that?
Everyone now has them iPhones and chat GPTs and Primaris Space Marines. What's wrong with regular Space Marines? They fit in the box. I can't fit Primaris in the box. Which makes them incredibly rare and therefore valuable. I got to go walk to my basements to find the box big enough to fit the
Where is the location of my basement?
Where am I? Oh, hamburgers, that's not the killing basement. I just took 12 ounces. I got to find my Joseon Koreans so I can review them for the internet. So when opening the packaging, or as we call it now, unboxing the product, I broke down crying, screaming and vomiting out my internal organs and collapsing down the stairwell in paroxysms of rage. Because today's attention economy relies on lowest denominator fake drama for news. Just look how many stupid faces there are. The bigger their gaping mouths, the more I invest. So anyways, I'm pulling out the miniatures out of the bag while tumbling down the staircase, and I have a brief moment between each concussive blow to note that I'm actually looking at 2 bags. Because RedBox were generous enough to give us maybe 6 or 7 wargamers worldwide who collect 172nd Joseon Koreans. Some figure variety. Thank you, based RedBox. Each box comes with 12 riders and 12 horses total, and 6 poses of riders and horses each. So you get 2 of each pose. And you know what? I think that's pretty good. But the Zvezda Samurai Cavalry set has 17 riders and 17 horses, with 7 unique rider poses and 5 unique horse poses. You get similar numbers for Italeri and Zvezda Mongol Cavalry. So maybe RedBox aren't that good. They have around 1/3 less riders. That's a lot of riders, that's just not that good. What are we gonna do? Well, let me give you the painting bench take on it. We are hostages in the basement. The ISIS basement. We got not many ways out. Who else is going to make Joseon Dynasty Korean Heavy Cavalry in 172nd scale? It's just not gonna happen. They're not coming for us. So if you want to follow in my footsteps and make a 172nd Joseon era army, this is one of the few choices that you have. But I don't really see this as a terrible crime. Look, we get 1/3 less number of models. That's not great, but still a decent amount of figures. I personally don't need that many cavalry for my chosen rule system basic impetus, but it could be a problem if you're trying to recreate the Joseon military in its entirety. But on a positive note, there are 2 sets of cavalry, so there are a total of 12 unique poses of Joseon heavy cavalry, allowing you to create varied, characterful units. I myself have both sets because I am a purveyor of the finest things. So if money is no object, having more pose variety is good, but I have to admit, the value is not as great as other 172nd manufacturers. Look, I'm just glad we have the things. If it wasn't for RedBox, there would be no plastic Joseon cavalry in 172nd scale in existence at all. And beggars cannot be choosers. And playing 172nd early modern Asian wars is the wargaming equivalent of living in Skid Row, if you get my analogy. Okay, so let's look at the miniatures themselves. When I look at these miniatures, I feel a repressed rage against my uncle, but also a sense of awe at the sculpting quality. Now I have to admit, if you know nothing about miniatures, you might not understand, but the odds of a non-miniature enthusiast watching this is small. But when I get involved in something, I want the best, and this set is quality, so I like that. I don't know why I like miniatures, please don't hit me Uncle Jeff, but in terms of sculpting quality, the faces are rendered with care and detail, and the armors are ornate and lovingly sculpted. There are little fine scales for lamellar armor, visible noses and mouths which are anatomically correct. There are adequate poses and a variety of weapons, so the models themselves are beautiful, like music rendered unto solid form. Please don't hit me Uncle Jeff. Now, how historically accurate are these figures? You may be wondering. Well, you asked the wrong person. I'm not a historian. I have no formal qualifications. What I have done is try to do research into the Joseon military of this period. I watched a few movies and TV shows about the Imjin Wars, and everything was essentially filtered through Google Translate. Now, I think I'm right, but so did Napoleon at Waterloo, and he was not right, no. I didn't fight at Waterloo. That would be ridiculous. I fought at the Battle of Tondibi where we sent the cows against the Portuguese, but the cows didn't like the Portuguese. I mean, who does, am I right? And so they came back home, but the strength of our army was reduced by a third. So we lost the battle and the whole empire collapsed, which was pretty bad because the cows had nowhere to live after that. So anyways, the most important historical thing is the armor, because it's hard to sculpt armor. If someone's got a wrong sword, you can replace the sword with some glue and spare bits, but armor is a hard thing to get rid of, you know? So quick history lesson, because it's relevant. The Joseon dynasty valued cavalry as a vital element of the army, with a high ratio of horsemen to counter Jurchen raiders in the north. Joseon dynasty armor could be brigandine, or the more ancient lamellar or plate and mail or chainmail. A horse is expensive. You wouldn't give a rider inferior paper or cotton armor. The RedBox models are not perfect. But not even the Koreans got their own history perfect. You know this huge prominent statue in Seoul of Admiral Yi Sun-shin? Korean historians don't think it's historically accurate. The current statue appears to be wearing Tang-style shoulder pads. But apparently they kept it because the statue now has cultural value, which is fair enough. But you know, strictly speaking, some of the RedBox sculpts aren't completely historically accurate, according to our current understanding of Joseon armor. You have instances of what resembles plate and mail, which is fine. We have some what could be lamellar without shoulders, which is also fine. We have brigandine, which is fine. But we also have this strange armor, which shouldn't be lamellar, because Joseon lamellar didn't have protection for the armpits. We also have what appears to be an accurate portrayal of lamellar with this dual-wielding rider. In terms of coverage, it could be chainmail, but the raised plates don't look like chainmail. I think it was meant to be fish-scale armor, because it conforms to the overall shape of the fish scales and matches the coverage area for armpits and the thigh areas for the Yi Sun-shin statue. Then, we have other figures, which I'm sure are wearing saenghwang gap armor or fish scale armor, because you can see the brigandine underneath it, which was a common look for it. However, the brigandine does not show through on the arms, even though it's meant to. So these saenghwang gap armors are inaccurate. Not to mention that this type of armor wasn't invented until after the Imjin War. But it's so iconic now that I personally have to include it in my army. In my mind, my army soldiers wear early prototypes. That's fine by me. Now, for the posing, some of it is a little awkward, just like how you look in photos, but most of it is fine in the usual fighting or readying weapons poses. However, there is a rather peculiar problem with this set. The horses look too small for the riders. This opinion was first shared by Plastic Soldier Review, and you can see by my photos here that the horses look like they're about to collapse under the weight of these huge ass warriors. Why are the horses so small? They just look comical. They don't create the imposing aura of intimidation you want for your warrior elite. That's not cute. Now, in a pinch, I guess you could use them, but I play miniature wargaming for the visual impact of awesome figures. So appearance matters to me, just like how you pose in your photos. So how do these figures look on the tabletop? Behold, the warrior elite of my army, the Jeom Sabok, which form a unit of the mounted division of the King's Royal Guard itself, charged with protecting His Majesty the King, safeguarding the palaces and training other soldiers. As elite cavalrymen, Jeom Sabok have their pick of weapons and armor. The guards, while all bearing bows, the famed and favored weapons of the Joseon Koreans, exhibit an arsenal of melee weapons. The cavalry flail in particular can rain vicious and unpredictable blows with huge force and is often favored by the mounted guards. Others dual-wield swords on horseback, a feat only possible by the most skilled swordsmen. When making these, I replaced the RedBox horses with horses from my very own bits box to make them taller and more intimidating. Painting these, I wanted a variety of different colors for each figure to give each man their own character and make this seem like a unit of heroes. The horses too have different colors, all matching the historical coats of horses in the Joseon dynasty. The flail-bearing warrior was inspired by my friend Luri's model, and I tried to replicate it to honor him. The Morningstar figure has a white brigandine helmet, an unusual color, but fitting to make an elite stand out. At first I didn't know what to make of the armor, I couldn't be bothered to resculpt it, but I really wanted a painted example of black lamellar armor. So I justified the wrong sleeves by thinking of it as a standard lamellar armor with some kind of metal lamellar sleeve, which wouldn't even exist, or some kind of weird scale armor. But after doing research and even finishing the whole base, I realized it was just historically inaccurate, and that could not stand. So I literally resculpted the sleeves after the model was finished and made it standard lamellar. Then I made the dual-wielding swordsman, and I had this image in my head. I wanted to recreate this guard. I just love the way his armor looks and his high armored collar and neck protection. It just looks very stylish and very sleek to me. So my first impression for this figure was the shoulder pieces were inaccurate. So I green stuffed the whole thing into chainmail and made the overall impression into plate and mail, not thinking that it was lamellar. I was very set on recreating this guy. I love this guy! I realize now that I could have just painted it as lamellar armor and wouldn't have to resculpt anything, but I really like the guy. So overall, this set is beautiful and detailed, but it has a few problems, like all the horses being too small and the armor being inaccurate at times. This probably will not affect if you buy it or not, because you either never wanted to play Joseon Koreans in 1/72nd scale, and I can't blame you, there's only like 8 of us globally, or you do, and then you have no other choice in the matter, because no one else is making them. Regardless, I think the sculpting quality of the miniatures outweigh the negatives of these tiny, childlike horses. And these riders do indeed look like vaunted, decorated elites, which is the essence of Joseon Heavy Cavalry. There you have it. We finished our tour of the Changdeokgung Palace, and hopefully you've decided whether you want to buy some RedBox Korean Heavy Cavalry or not. I'm going to get out of this rain before it destroys me. Girls like the horse minis way more than the soldiers.